So if we look at the notes, because this is, again, more code than you probably want to type, this is the code that we're going to kind of drop in. And if we see an error, we can kind of go deal with it in a second. But it's basically going to add a bunch of CSP headers. Because if we take our current site, let's actually fix it first for a second. I will tell you right now, I think it gets a B+. No, maybe less. I think it might get an F from the Mozilla Observatory, just because it doesn't have all the right headers that have been set. Right? It's like, hey, you should do this, and you should do these other things so you don't get hacked. Right? But CloudFront just doesn't do them for us. So we don't have that kind of in place. So what we want to do is, we can go to like Observatory, Mozilla, and you put in any site. I'll show you the one that I made kind of earlier, which is superawesome.xyz instead. I'm clearly not good at coming up with names. It will scan the site. This is a version, as the other one kind of deploys to the previous yellow version. This is a version that has all the checks passing, but out of the box, that is not how it works, right? So we can go ahead. Let's see, did this redeploy? Yes. So now let's put in superawesome.click. And we'll go do another scan. It's got an F. That's not good. We can do better than that. We would like to go from an F to an A+. And again, like I said, we've just got, all we have to do is fix some of the headers. Effectively, all I did was go through all the things that it was yelling at me for and adjust them, right? That's a little bit outside the scope of this. We can kind of just look at it together. But basically, what we want to do is go through, and then as the request comes in, we modify all the headers, setting them to just the headers that should be set, right? Because this is where the ability to program our CDN becomes fairly helpful. So let's go ahead and just look at that. So you can just see it's just setting the most important ones of the content security policy, which is like, cool, we'll allow only images from ourselves, scripts from ourselves, styles from our own domain, so on and so forth. Turn off the X-frame options, so on and so forth, right? And these are just kind of the suggestions just to prove that it worked. Right now, the server is Amazon S3 because that's the origin, right? Like a lot of times, if your site in the header goes, yeah, Ruby on Rails 4.0, which was like end of life in 2015, and the security vulnerabilities are known, you've just said here's how to own me, right? This is ours actually out of the box says Amazon S3. I think the hard part of inventing your own framework is that you need to name it first. So welcome to my new framework, Erlang on Eels. It doesn't exist yet. But that's not, as far as anyone going to this website, they don't know that, right? As far as they know, they're going to be looking for the documentation for Erlang on Eels. And this is how I become a thought leader. So let's go ahead. We will grab this code and kind of put it in place. And if you want to try a different one, there's a few other recipes in here as well. There's one where I get the client-side routes working. They're kind of variations on a theme. So let's actually look at all of them real quick, and we'll pick which one we like the most. I like the security header ones because I need an A+, because I'm a millennial who needs validation. But if we want to handle those client-side routes, here we know that all of the client-side routes are notes and then a number, right? And so we can basically look at the URI on the request object we get from the event. If it matches this notes / possibly edit, change it to URI on the way into CloudFront, right? Which CloudFront will be like, cool, I'll ask S3 for index.html, which will totally be OK. But they won't change the actual response header. So it'll say CloudFront. CloudFront will say to S3, get me index.html. We'll tell the browser, I got notes / zombie. Here it is, right? So we can actually have our 200s be 200s and our 404s be 404s. Now, clearly, I happen to have a simple app where like notes / a word will do the trick. So what we did was we knew the general topography of our application. We had all the routes pretty much spec'd out. And so we had a little bit more robust version of this for the actual structure of our application. But the same basic principle will work in this case. The security headers we saw. You can also implement a redirect. So this would be on origin request. So if we leave the cache, we can actually generate our own response before we ever touch S3, respond to the request with this URL, and they'll be redirected, right? So you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can program the CDN in all sorts of interesting and different ways, and it's just basically taking those requests and responses and doing various different things with them as well. So let's say it's a Rickroll, if you need to know. Nobody play it right now. We're recording. It's the same video that you could expect because I am a child on the internet. All right, so let's go in here. Let's grab this one. If it doesn't work, we'll do some debugging in a second because I believe that was our issue. So we'll go into Lambda. We will have our version 1. Here it is. In this case, we want to go back to our code. Now, if you click on the code and you try to type things, it looks like you have a cursor, right, that you can move around. Doesn't do anything until you hit edit code. Then it looks exactly the same, but now you can type. So we'll paste that in as well. We'll save it and deploy it. Again, hitting deploy does not deploy it to CloudFront. Then you go to actions, deploy to Lambda at edge. Look again, hopefully once you have this in place, most of it should work. This should be the viewer response. So on the way out, change the headers in every way that we need so that they pass the Mozilla test. I acknowledge what I'm doing. And that should go out at this point. Awesome. So successfully created version 2 of your function associated with the CloudFront trigger. Function is being replicated across all the regions. Great. Our Lambda at edge did in fact cook, right? As you can see, it is running. And I just recently reran the Mozilla Observatory. I can run it again if nobody believes me. You only get to run it once every 5 minutes. So I ran it while the opportunity was there. And you can see we went from an F previously to an A+ just by fixing those headers. And that is one of the powers of the programmable CDN aspect here, right? Which is like previously would have been like, well, this is what it does. Wait for a feature to come out or something along those lines. The idea that if you needed to modify stuff or, like I said, set cookies or do any custom logic, that you can do it, and that this is happening at the edge, right, close to your users, right? Like, and it depends. If you're still talking to a database located in Des Moines, then like you're still going to pay some of those costs. But if you can like also set up so as few requests go back to that API, if it's simply just get me the latest top trending items for the Twitter sidebar, that's not even necessarily possibly too much scope to a user, right? There are things you can probably move to the edge and cache, right? And then obviously a user's personal stuff is usually probably unique to them, but maybe you keep that with a TTL. So if they keep refreshing the page, it's not slamming on your servers. They're getting a cached version. So maybe one, even if you like set a TTL on something like that from down to like 30 seconds, it means one request gets through every 30 seconds at that point, right? Like, and for the APIs, there's like, you know, a web application firewall and stuff like that. You can use that origin shield. You can do even more protection around that as well. For our static assets, we're mostly just trying to, we know that we can basically, you know, store it for a really long time until we cast the invalidation on a deploy or something along those lines.